What if I told you that right now you're actually dead? Crazy, right? But an ancient Tibetan text says death isn't just the end of life, it's happening all the time. The Bardo Thödol, or Tibetan Book of the Dead, talks about these weird states we go through our whole lives, even before we die. And get this, it says understanding these states can lead to something mind-blowing. But if that's true, why aren't more people experiencing this incredible revelation? Stay tuned, because the answer might completely change how you see your life. So there's actually a manual for being dead, you bet. It's an ancient Tibetan text that's been blowing minds for over 1,000 years. Welcome to the wild world of the Bardo Thödol, or as most people call it, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Back in 8th century Tibet, when Buddhism was just starting to catch on, this legendary guy named Padmasambhava showed up. They called him the Precious Master, and he created the Bardo Thödol. But here's the weird part. It's not for living people. This book is meant to be read to someone who's dying or already dead. It's like a spiritual GPS guiding souls through the crazy journey of the afterlife. The Bardo Thödol flips everything we think we know about death and consciousness on its head. It says death isn't the end. It's more like a pit stop on this huge cosmic road trip. The book talks about 3 main stages every soul goes through after death, each with its own challenges and chances for growth. But it gets even wilder. The Bardo Thödol says we're actually going through these stages all the time, even while we're alive. It's like we're constantly dying and being reborn, every single moment. Padmasambhava didn't just write this book and call it a day. He hid teachings all over Tibet for future treasure revealers to find when the time was right. It's like he made a bunch of spiritual time capsules, keeping this wisdom safe through centuries of chaos and change. So what if this super old book knows something we don't? What if death is really just a transition, a chance to break free instead of an ending? The Bardo Thödol pushes us to think beyond what we think we know about consciousness and reality. It's not just about how to die. It's about how to live each moment to the fullest. Now, let's meet someone who's about to go on this wild ride. Our guide through this mind-bending stuff is going to be pretty skeptical. In fact, he doesn't believe any of it. At least, not yet. Imagine waking up to find yourself dead. Now picture that happening to someone who's sure that death is the end. We're about to follow a scientist on a wild ride through the afterlife he says doesn't exist. How will he deal with his new reality? Meet Dr. James Hartley, a well-known psychologist who doesn't believe in near-death experiences. With his neat beard and glasses, he looks every bit the skeptical academic. Dr. Hartley has built his career on explaining away supernatural claims with science. But life has a funny way of turning things upside down. One minute, Dr. Hartley is giving a lecture about how the brain creates hallucinations. The next, he's falling to the ground, his heart giving out. As everything goes dark, he hears panicked voices fading away. Then, to his surprise, he wakes up. But something's off. The lecture hall is gone. Instead, he's in a huge empty space full of swirling lights. Dr. Hartley can't believe what he's seeing. There are colors he's never seen before and feelings he can't explain. As he starts to get his bearings, Dr. Hartley realizes something scary. This isn't just a weird dream. He's stuck here, wherever here is. How long will this last? Is there a way out? And the scariest thought of all, what if all that superstition stuff he never believed in is actually real? In a moment of panic, he remembers something about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. He used to think it was just old myths, but now, faced with this impossible situation, he's grabbing onto those half-forgotten ideas like they're a lifeline. If this is real, he thinks, if I'm actually in some kind of afterlife, then maybe those ancient books can help me figure it out. It's hard for a lifelong skeptic to accept, but Dr. Hartley knows he needs to adapt. He realizes that to survive, or whatever you call it in this state, he might have to believe in things he's always said were nonsense. Feeling curious, but also pretty scared, Dr. Hartley gets ready for whatever comes next. He doesn't know what this weird afterlife has in store, but he's going to use his scientific mind to try and figure it out. He has no idea that he's about to go on a journey that will change everything he thought he knew about life, death, and reality itself. Want to see what happens to Dr. Hartley? Let's follow him into the unknown and see what he finds in the first stage of the afterlife, called the Chikai Bardo. It's time to find out if being skeptical all your life helps when you're facing the mysteries of death. What if I told you that the first moments after death could determine the fate of your soul forever? As Dr. Hartley enters the Chikai Bardo, he's facing a choice he never thought possible. Can a scientist navigate a realm where physics doesn't apply? Let's see if rational thinking can handle the ultimate awareness test. The Chikai Bardo hits Dr. Hartley like a tidal wave of pure feeling. 1 second, he's clinging to his world of lectures and lab coats. The next, he's in a place where physical existence seems to vanish. It's like someone reset reality itself. Dr. Hartley's mind spins as he tries to understand what's happening. His senses start to blur together. He can't tell if he's falling or floating, growing or shrinking. It's like trying to describe a color that doesn't exist. Panic sets in as Dr. Hartley grasps for something familiar. But there's no heartbeat to feel, no breath to count. His scientific tools are useless here. For the first time, he's truly in unknown territory. Just when he thinks he can't take it anymore, something amazing happens. A light appears. But it's not just light. It's like pure awareness flooding his entire being. This is the clear light, the core of mind described in the Bardo Thödol. In this light, all of Dr. Hartley's fears and doubts melt away. For a moment, he sees a reality beyond separation, like he's looking at the face of existence itself. Dr. Hartley's scientific brain struggles to make sense of it. Is this a hallucination from his dying brain? Or could it be something his skepticism never prepared him for? As the clear light surrounds him, Dr. Hartley faces a huge test. Can he let go of everything he thought he knew and accept this new reality? Or will his doubt make him miss this chance? The stakes are huge. Recognizing this light could free him from the cycle of death and rebirth. But for Dr. Hartley, who's trained to question everything, giving in goes against all his instincts. His mind races to explain what he's seeing, and he might miss the truth right in front of him. As fast as it came, the clear light fades. Dr. Hartley feels himself pulled back to a more normal state of mind. The chance slips away, leaving him confused and shaken. Our skeptical psychologist isn't ready to let go of his old views yet, but his journey through the Bardos isn't over. As the Chikai Bardo ends, Dr. Hartley rushes towards the next stage of the afterlife, one that will challenge everything he thought he knew about reality. Just when Dr. Hartley thought he'd seen it all, the Chunyid Bardo arrives to flip his world upside down. Picture a place where your subconscious paints the world around you. Sounds amazing, right? But what if that canvas starts filling up with the scariest parts of your mind? As our doubtful psychologist dives into this new afterlife stage, he's bombarded with wild sensations. Colors and shapes he never imagined possible pop into existence, breaking all the rules he thought he knew. Dr. Hartley's brain goes into overdrive, trying to make sense of it all, but this feels more real than anything he's ever experienced. Out of nowhere, figures start to appear. These aren't just random shapes. They're deities, glowing with peace and wisdom. One looks like it's made of pure light. Another has 1,000 arms. The Bardo Thödol says these peaceful deities show the good stuff inside the dead person's mind. Things like kindness, wisdom, and the chance to reach enlightenment. Dr. Hartley realizes something odd. The deities seem to be waiting for him, like they're offering him a choice. Can he see them for what they really are? As he struggles with this, everything changes. The peaceful deities start to fade away, and things get creepy. The colors that were beautiful before now look scary, and the cool shapes turn threatening. Dr. Hartley feels a deep fear building up inside him. Something's coming. Something that makes those peaceful deities look like no big deal. As darkness creeps in, he realizes he's about to face the scary side of his own mind. The wrathful deities are on their way, bringing all his worst fears and old traumas with them. What's really going on here, and why? Let's dig into the meaning behind these weird visions. Because in the Chunyid Bardo, things aren't what they seem, and anything could lead to big changes. In the afterlife's chaos, our skeptical psychologist meets beings that challenge everything he knows. These aren't your everyday angels. The peaceful deities of the Bardo Thödol are about to flip Dr. Hartley's world upside down. As the visions become clear, Dr. Hartley sees beings of pure light. His scientific brain tries to make sense of it all. Are these hallucinations? A vivid dream? But his usual approach doesn't work here. These entities feel more real than anything he's ever known. He remembers something he once read about the Bardo Thödol and brushed off as nonsense. These beings aren't separate from him. They're parts of his own mind, showing his potential for enlightenment. Dr. Hartley laughs at the idea. How could these incredible beings be parts of him? But as he watches them, they start to feel familiar. He begins to understand the Buddhist idea of emptiness in a new way. These dazzling deities are just projections of the mind, no more or less real than he is. This idea shakes him. If these beings are projections, what does that mean for reality? For his own existence? His neuroscience knowledge falls short here. There's something bigger going on, something that challenges everything he thought he knew about consciousness. As he interacts with these peaceful deities, Dr. Hartley notices changes in himself. He feels more compassionate, wise, and balanced. It's like these beings are showing him parts of himself he never fully accepted. If these deities represent his potential for enlightenment, what else might he be capable of? Just as he starts to embrace these new ideas, everything changes. The peaceful deities fade away. The colors turn dark. And what was once beautiful now seems dangerous. Dr. Hartley realizes he's about to face something much harder. The darker parts of himself, in the form of the Bardo Thödol's wrathful deities. What if your worst nightmare is actually a key to your freedom?
As aspects of your mind,
as Dr. Hartley's Bardo journey takes a scary turn, he's about to learn why some doors in our minds might be worth opening after all. The peaceful deities vanish, and Dr. Hartley feels a chill. Colors darken, and the air gets heavy.
The famous
Suddenly,
psychologist,
terrifying figures appear all around him.
Of the collective,
these aren't regular monsters.
Universal archetypes.
We're talking about creatures with multiple heads, fire-breathing fangs, and countless arms holding weapons. Dr. Hartley can barely make sense of what he's seeing.
But what happens if you can't
as these
see
scary
through the illusion?
Beings close in,
What if you get too
Dr.
comfortable
Hartley
basking
feels
in the glow
more afraid
of these
than he's ever
divine
been.
beings? Well, that's
It's like
when the
all his
Bardo
fears and
decides
bad
it's time
memories
for
are
a
coming
wake-up
back at
call.
once.
The peaceful deities
But something's
start to
off.
fade, and in
These
their
scary
place,
figures seem
something
familiar
much more
somehow.
unsettling
That
begins
many
to
armed
emerge.
one with the surgical
The wrathful
tools reminds him of his
deities
fear of
are about to
hospitals,
make their grand
and that
entrance,
big
and they're
judgmental
not
one
here to play
looks a lot
nice.
like his strict dad.
But that's a story for
Then it
another
hits him.
section.
These
For
aren't
now,
outside
let's
threats.
Just say that the
They're
afterlife
parts of
is
himself
about
he's
to take
tried
a
to
turn
ignore.
for the terrifying.
Each scary figure is a fear or problem he hasn't dealt with. The Bardo Thödol says these scary beings are actually the same as the peaceful ones, just seen through fear. As Dr. Hartley tries to stay calm, he starts to get it. That fire-breathing monster? It's his curiosity gone wild. The judging figure? It's his inner critic, blown up to a huge size. Dr. Hartley has to choose. Will he run from these scary parts of his mind or face them? Seeing them for what they really are could change everything. Everything in him wants to escape this nightmare. But a small part, the part that always looks for truth, tells him to stay and face it. As he struggles, Dr. Hartley starts to see these scary figures differently. Their chances to face his fears and accept parts of himself he's pushed away. By doing this, he might change in a big way. The chaos around him shifts. The scary forms are still there, but they start to lose their power over him. Dr. Hartley realizes this face-off with his inner demons could be the biggest moment of his life, or afterlife. But the Bardo journey isn't done yet. As the scary figures fade, he feels there's more to come. What's waiting in the final Bardo? And is Dr. Hartley ready for it? As the wrathful deities fade, Dr. Hartley faces a new challenge. He's at a cosmic crossroads where his past choices shape his future. This isn't just in his head, it's his new reality. He's entered the Tibetan Book, the last stop before rebirth. It's like a cosmic waiting room, but with much higher stakes than he ever imagined. Looking around, Dr. Hartley realizes every decision he's made matters now. His life has been a long game of cosmic chess, and it's time for the final move. Karma plays a big role here, but it's not simple. It's more like a subtle force guiding his attractions. Dr. Hartley feels drawn to some visions and pushed away from others, as if different futures are calling to him. The crazy part? He's not consciously choosing. The Tibetan Book of the Dead says this process is instinctive, based on built-up karma. Dr. Hartley's trying to analyze it all, seeing different realms he could be reborn into. He's torn. Part of him wants to think this through logically. But he's starting to see that his deepest fears and desires are really in control. The pressure's on. This might be his last shot at breaking free from rebirth. But what does that even mean to someone who just started believing in all this? Dr. Hartley's stuck between what he knows, another life as a scientist, and something totally new. Could he really end the cycle for good? It's not a simple choice. It's like being pulled by invisible strings, guided by everything he's ever done or thought. He realizes he's been making this choice his whole life. Now, it's the moment of truth. Will Dr. Hartley see the true nature of his mind and break free? Or will he be born again, shaped by his past? The Tibetan Book is his final chance to transcend. After everything he's been through, what will Dr. Hartley choose? Let's look at the options our skeptic faces as he stands between rebirth and liberation. You know that feeling when you're about to make a huge decision. Now multiply that by 1,000,000. Dr. Hartley's standing at a crossroads, facing 6 different paths for his next life. And get this, everything he's ever done might be pushing him one way or another. The Bardo Thödol says picking your next life isn't like choosing a vacation spot. It's more like being pulled by invisible strings, based on all your past thoughts and actions. Dr. Hartley feels drawn to some futures and totally turned off by others, like his soul is vibrating with different possibilities. He's got 6 options straight out of Buddhist beliefs. There's the God realm, which sounds nice but has a catch. Then there's jealous gods, humans, animals, hungry ghosts, and hell. Not exactly easy choices, right? As he thinks about each one, memories from his life keep popping up. Every little thing he did suddenly seems super important. It's almost too much to handle. How can anyone make this kind of choice? But here's the twist. The Bardo Thödol says it's not really a choice at all. It's more like a magnet pulling you towards what matches your inner self. So what's going to influence where Dr. Hartley ends up? His skeptical side might keep him human. The kindness he's learned could pull him higher. And those fears he faced earlier, they might drag him down. As the moment gets closer, Dr. Hartley realizes something big. In a way, he's been making this choice his whole life. All that karma isn't just points on a scoreboard, it's who he really is. But hold on, there might be another option. The Bardo Thödol hints at a way to break free from this whole rebirth cycle. As Dr. Hartley stands on the edge of his next life, he wonders, can he get off this crazy ride? Or is he stuck going round and round forever? Just when Dr. Hartley thought he'd seen it all, the Bardo Thödol throws him a curveball. There's a third option beyond rebirth or oblivion, but it means questioning everything he thought he knew about existence. Can he let go of a lifetime of assumptions and embrace a reality that goes against his scientific training? As our skeptical psychologist weighs his options, he discovers something new. The Bardo Thödol talks about liberation, a way to break free from the endless cycle of rebirth. But it's not easy. It requires a big shift in how he sees the world and himself. The Tibetans call it recognizing the true nature of mind. For Dr. Hartley, this idea is as strange as all the weird visions he's been having. He's torn. Escaping the cycle sounds good, no more uncertainty or suffering. But it means giving up everything he knows and believes in. His scientific mindset, his sense of self, even how he understands reality, all of it would have to go. Dr. Hartley is at a crossroads. Part of him wants to play it safe and choose another life. But there's also something new pulling at him. A glimpse of something huge that he can't quite describe. As he thinks it over, he realizes the Bardos have been teaching him all along. They've been pushing him to let go of his old ideas and see past his own thoughts. Even those scary and peaceful deities weren't random. They were parts of his own mind. The pressure builds as Dr. Hartley tries to decide. Will he stick with what he knows or take a leap into the unknown? Suddenly, something clicks. All his experiences in the Bardos come together. He realizes there's been something constant through it all, a basic awareness that hasn't changed. As he focuses on this awareness, it feels familiar. It's like remembering something he's always known but forgot about. In that moment, everything changes. The visions, the pull of rebirth, even Dr. Hartley's sense of self. It all starts to fade away. What's left is a huge, clear awareness without any boundaries. Dr. Hartley has made the leap. By recognizing his mind's true nature, he's found the key to freedom. It's not about escaping existence, but waking up to what it really is. As our once skeptical psychologist becomes one with this limitless awareness, we're left wondering, how can these ideas help those of us dealing with everyday life? Let's see how the Bardo Thödol might change how we think about life, death, and everything in between. Now wait a second. Before you brush off the Bardo Thödol as some old book only for the dead, think about this. What if facing your own death could actually help you live better? The Tibetan Book of the Dead might have the secret to beating your biggest fears and reaching your full potential. Let's be real, most of us avoid thinking about death like it's the plague. We keep busy with work, social media, and never-ending to-do lists. But the Bardo Thödol does things differently. It says that by looking death in the eye, we can actually live more fully. When you really get that your time is limited, suddenly those little worries don't seem so big. That fight with your coworker? Not a big deal in the long run. Scared to start that new project? That's nothing compared to regretting never trying. The Bardo teachings give us practical ways to handle life's challenges. Those in-between moments, when you feel lost or unsure, those are mini Bardos, chances to grow and change. Next time you're stuck in traffic or waiting in line, try this. Take a deep breath and watch your thoughts without getting caught up in them. See how they come and go, just like the visions in the Bardos. Think about big life changes, switching jobs, ending a relationship, moving to a new city. These are perfect times to use Bardo wisdom. Instead of holding on to what you know or fearing what's next, try being curious and open. You can let go of old habits and become someone new. Research shows that thinking about death can actually make us behave better. A study in psychological science found that people who think about death tend to focus more on long-term goals than quick pleasures. Facing your mortality might be just the push you need to finally write that book, start that business, or fix that relationship. Picture waking up each day with a real sense of purpose, knowing it could be your last. Imagine facing problems calmly, seeing them as chances to grow instead of roadblocks. Think about living without being frozen by fear of the unknown, but excited by what could happen. These old teachings have found their way into modern life, shaping everything from psychology to pop culture. The story of how the Bardo Thödol went from Tibetan mountains to Western minds is pretty wild. Let's look at how these ideas have changed how we think about life, death, and everything in between. Ever wonder how an ancient Tibetan text ended up in John Lennon's lyrics? The journey of the Bardo Thödol from Tibetan monasteries to Western pop culture is pretty wild. Let's see how this sacred book made its way into our modern world. In 1919, a scholar named W.Y. Evans Wentz got his hands on some Tibetan texts during a trip. He worked with a translator, Kazi Dawa Sumdup, to understand these old writings. Evans Wentz saw himself as more than just a translator. He claimed to be Dawa Sumdup's disciple and a voice for Tibetan wisdom. When the Bardo Thödol hit the West, it caused quite a stir. Western thinkers, used to hard facts, didn't know what to make of this guide to the afterlife. But some, like the famous psychologist Carl Jung, saw its value. Jung thought it might tell us something important about how our minds work. The Bardo Thödol's influence spread beyond just psychology. Artists and musicians found inspiration in it too. John Lennon even used it for his song Tomorrow Never Knows, bringing Tibetan ideas to radio listeners everywhere. In the 1960s, the Bardo Thödol found a whole new audience. People exploring meditation or psychedelics noticed similarities between their experiences and what the text described. This got people asking big questions about consciousness and reality. This old Tibetan text has really shaken things up in Western thought. It's made us rethink what we thought we knew about the mind, art, and even existence itself. But what does modern science say about all this? Are researchers finding any connections between these ancient ideas and what we're learning about the brain today? Let's take a look at what happens when new science meets old wisdom. You might be surprised by what we find, and it might change how you think about your own mind. Imagine a scientist trying to measure enlightenment with a ruler. Sounds silly, right? But that's kind of what's happening in labs around the world. Researchers are looking inside the brains of meditators, people who've had near-death experiences, and folks who've taken psychedelics. They're studying states of mind that sound a lot like the Bardos in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. You might wonder how scientists can study something as personal as a spiritual experience. It's tricky, but they're finding ways to do it. Take near-death experiences. You know those stories about light tunnels and floating above your body? They're pretty similar to the Chikai Bardo, the first stage of the afterlife in Tibetan tradition. People often talk about feeling really peaceful and seeing beings of light. And get this, scientists think these experiences might be linked to what happens in your brain when it's not getting enough oxygen. Now let's talk about meditation. Scientists have been scanning monks' brains for years, and they're finding some cool stuff. Longtime meditators can get into states that look a lot like the Bardos. They feel like they're losing their sense of self, see vivid images in their mind, and sometimes even feel like they're leaving their body, all while just sitting there with their eyes closed. When people have these experiences, their brains actually change. For example, there's less activity in the part of the brain that's linked to our sense of self. It's like the brain is taking a break from being you for a while. So what does all this mean? Are we proving that the Bardos are real? Not quite. But we're seeing some interesting connections between old spiritual ideas and new brain science. It shows that our brains can create experiences that sound a lot like what ancient texts describe as the afterlife. The big question is, what does this tell us about life and death? Are these Bardo-like experiences just weird things our brains do, or are they peeks at something bigger? As scientists keep studying this stuff, we might have to rethink what we know about consciousness, reality, and what it means to exist. What if I told you that a die-hard skeptic could have his entire worldview flipped by a near-death experience? That's exactly what happened to Dr. James Hartley, our reluctant guide through the Bardos. After his journey through the afterlife realms, described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, he's left struggling with a deep inner conflict. Dr. Hartley's logical mind is working overtime, trying to make sense of what he just went through. How can he square his lifelong dedication to scientific skepticism with the undeniable reality of his Bardo journey? The mental clash is almost painful. His vivid encounters with peaceful and wrathful deities, experiencing formless awareness, and glimpsing potential liberation have left a lasting impact. Dr. Hartley now questions basic ideas about consciousness and reality. He's realized that what we think of as reality might be much more subjective than he ever thought possible. The Bardos showed him how quickly our experience can change when our usual understanding of physical existence is stripped away. Dr. Hartley now sees how his actions and thoughts ripple out far beyond himself. He now views karma not as some mystical force, but as a natural law of cause and effect working in ways he'd never considered. His understanding of consciousness has been completely turned around. The idea that awareness might go beyond the physical brain, that it might be more basic than he'd ever imagined, both excites and scares him. It challenges everything he thought he knew about the human mind. As we see Dr. Hartley wrestling with these new ideas, we can't help but wonder, has his worldview completely changed? His entire way of thinking has been shaken up, and he's trying to put the pieces back together in a new way. Dr. Hartley is now open to ideas he would have instantly rejected before his journey. But his scientific training is still there. He's looking at these new insights with both curiosity and caution, eager to explore but careful not to jump to conclusions. His journey bridges the gap between the ancient wisdom of the Tibetan Book of the Dead and our modern scientific worldview. It hints that there might be more to reality than our current scientific models can explain, while also showing the value of critical thinking, even for the most unusual experiences. As we leave Dr. Hartley to keep processing his experience, we're left with some big questions. If a confirmed skeptic can have his view of the world so deeply changed, what could that mean for the rest of us? And how might the insights from the Bardo Thödol apply to our everyday lives, even if we haven't had a near-death experience? Imagine waking up and realizing everything you thought you knew about life and death was just the tip of the iceberg. That's the kind of mind-blowing revelation the Bardo Thödol offers. Whether you're skeptical or open-minded, this ancient Tibetan text has some deep wisdom for all of us. The Bardo Thödol isn't just about what happens after we die. It's a guide for living more fully right now. It teaches us that life is full of transitions, or Bardos. These aren't just big life events. We're constantly moving through mini Bardos in our daily lives without even noticing. You might be wondering how this old text fits into our modern scientific world. Surprisingly, a lot of its ideas line up with cutting-edge research in psychology and neuroscience. Take the concept of impermanence. Science shows our brains are always changing based on what we experience. The text's focus on understanding the nature of mind connects with mindfulness practices that have been proven to reduce stress and improve focus. The Bardo Thödol touches on big themes that matter to people everywhere: fear of death, searching for meaning, wanting to escape suffering. By thinking about these ideas, we can face death with less fear and more acceptance. Weirdly enough, thinking about death can make us appreciate life more, realizing how precious each moment is. These teachings can help us handle life's ups and downs better. When we get that everything is temporary, good and bad, we can roll with the punches instead of getting knocked down by them. The Bardo Thödol makes us question what we think we know about consciousness and existence. What if our everyday life is just another kind of dream? What if who we are is more flexible and connected than we think? These aren't just abstract ideas. They could totally change how we live and die. Picture starting each day, knowing it could be your last. Not because you're scared, but because you're so grateful to be alive. Imagine seeing death not as the end, but as a change, a chance for something amazing to happen. The Bardo Thödol gives us a peek into the depths of human consciousness and reality that goes beyond what we usually see. This ancient text invites us to explore our own minds and live more fully in the present. The journey it offers is just starting. What might you discover? Only one way to find out. You know that feeling of excitement before a big adventure? That's what exploring your personal Bardo is like. But here's the cool part. You don't have to wait until you're dead to start. The real question is what you'll do with your life right now. Picture your own Bardo experience. What would you see if all your thoughts, fears, and desires suddenly appeared around you? Maybe you'd see your biggest achievements or face the regrets you've been avoiding. It's not easy to confront our deep fears, but doing so can really change us. What if you could see your fears as just passing thoughts, not solid facts? Imagine facing life's challenges, knowing that everything, good and bad, doesn't last forever. The Bardo teachings make us think about what we believe about ourselves and reality. Could your sense of self be more connected to everything else than you thought? You can use Bardo wisdom in everyday life. Next time you're waiting in line or stuck in traffic, just watch your thoughts. See how they come and go, like the visions in the Bardos. This can help you become more mentally flexible. Or try thinking about your own death when you wake up. It sounds weird, but research shows it can actually make you live better, helping you see how precious each moment is. Seeing each day as special can really change your life. Imagine handling life's ups and downs more calmly. Picture yourself living in the present, not always thinking about the past or worrying about the future. The real power of the Bardo Thödol is how it teaches us to live more fully. It's like an alarm clock, waking us up to experience every moment clearly and with purpose. Are you ready to explore your inner world? To face your personal Bardos and learn from them? This journey is all about enjoying the adventure of being fully alive, right here and now. The Bardo Thödol is a powerful tool for understanding our minds and reality. Whether you see it as a map of the afterlife or a metaphor for consciousness, it can completely change how you view the world. You don't need to wait until death to explore the Bardos. They're happening around you right now. Every time your thoughts shift, you're experiencing a mini Bardo. Life is giving you practice runs for the main event. Ready to dive deeper into your own mind? To face your fears and attachments? The real power of the Bardo Thödol is in teaching you how to truly live. Start exploring your consciousness today. Your journey begins now.